The ballroom sparkled with gold and crystal, chandeliers dripping light across marble floors polished so perfectly they mirrored the extravagant gowns swirling across them. And yet beneath all the glamour, there was an unease that most guests could not quite name. For this was no ordinary wedding, and everyone who had come knew it. Victor Harrington, the millionaire groom, stood tall and composed at the altar, his face giving little away as whispers floated around the room about the speed of the engagement and the wealth exchanged between families to secure the union. His bride, Clarissa, radiated beauty in her designer gown, her posture perfect, but her eyes sharp with a cruelty that could not be softened by makeup or jewels. And though she smiled for the cameras and the guests, that smile never touched her heart. In the background, moving quietly among the waitstaff, was Maria, a young maid who looked fragile in her simple uniform, her dark hair tied back, her face pale not only with fatigue, but also with the weight of pregnancy that was visible in the curve of her stomach. She had been ordered to work the wedding despite her condition, and though her body ached, she kept her head down, trying to go unnoticed. But Clarissa's eyes found her like a hawk spotting prey, and in one sharp command that cut through the music and chatter, she called Maria forward, her voice filled with disdain. Guests turned in surprise, craning their necks to see what the bride wanted with a servant, and when Maria hesitated, Clarissa smirked and declared that the maid should sing for the crowd. Laughter rippled from a few corners of the hall, though many shifted uncomfortably, sensing the malice behind the demand. Maria froze, her hands instinctively resting on her belly, as if to shield her child, her heart racing in humiliation and fear. Yet she knew refusal would mean punishment, perhaps even the loss of the only job keeping her afloat. Clarissa leaned back in satisfaction, her glittering eyes daring Maria to disobey, and under that pressure the young maid took a trembling step forward. The musicians fell silent, the room holding its breath, and then Maria's voice rose, soft at first, then stronger, carrying with it a purity and aching sorrow that seemed to melt the air itself. Every note she sang came not from practice but from pain and endurance, the story of her struggles spilling into the melody as tears threatened to spill from her eyes. The crowd, expecting awkwardness or ridicule, found themselves entranced, their chatter stilled, their attention caught by the raw emotion of a woman who had been humiliated and yet somehow rose above it in that moment. Clarissa's smug smile faltered as she realized the effect, for instead of mocking the maid, her guests were captivated, many even moved to tears by the hauntingly beautiful performance. Maria's voice filled every corner of the grand ballroom, the sound so genuine that even those who had come for gossip now felt shame at their curiosity, for they could see her exhaustion, her trembling hands, and the weight she carried. Yet none of that broke the song. When her final note lingered like a fragile thread of light, silence followed, heavy and charged, every pair of eyes turning not to Clarissa, but to Victor, waiting to see how the groom would respond to his bride's cruel command and the maid's unexpected defiance in the form of a song that no one would ever forget. The last note of Maria's song hung in the air like a fragile secret refusing to vanish, and in that stillness all eyes shifted to Victor Harrington, the millionaire groom who until that moment had remained stoic, his expression unreadable. But now he slowly rose from his seat, the scrape of his chair echoing through the hall like a drum roll of anticipation, and the entire room seemed to lean toward him waiting for his response. Clarissa, standing tall in her glittering gown, let out a brittle laugh, the kind that tried to disguise unease, and she waved her hand as if brushing off Maria's performance, expecting Victor to follow her lead and dismiss the maid with a cutting remark or perhaps an order to have her thrown out. But instead Victor's steps carried him across the marble floor straight toward Maria, his gaze fixed on her, not on the bride, not on the guests. And when he reached the trembling maid, he did something that stunned the hall into deeper silence. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder, a gesture of protection and tenderness, so at odds with the cruelty she had just endured that gasps rippled through the crowd. Clarissa's smile faltered into confusion, then horror, as Victor's voice rang out clear and steady, announcing that Maria was not merely a servant, not merely a maid forced into humiliation on his wedding day, but the woman carrying his child. The ballroom erupted in shocked whispers. Fans lifted to cover gasping mouths. Glasses nearly dropped from trembling hands, and Clarissa's face drained of its painted glow, her jaw tightening as though she had been struck. Victor's confession poured out in a rush, both raw and unapologetic, and he explained that long before the engagement arranged by Clarissa's wealthy family, he and Maria had been together in secret, a love that had grown in quiet corners away from society's gaze. But Clarissa's family had pressured him into a union of wealth and convenience, threatening his empire and reputation if he refused. He admitted that though he had tried to shield Maria from the scandal, providing for her discreetly, seeing her forced to sing in front of a room full of strangers while carrying his child was an act of cruelty he could not allow to pass unanswered. His words struck like lightning, and the hall buzzed with the storm of reactions. Some scandalized, some secretly thrilled. Others moved to see a man of such power choosing truth over reputation. Clarissa's voice rose in shrill protest, accusing him of betrayal, of ruining the perfect life she had envisioned. But Victor turned to her with a calm finality and declared that the wedding was over, that no wealth, no arrangement, no pressure from her family could bind him to a woman who humiliated another out of spite. He vowed then and there, before every guest, that he would stand by Maria and their unborn child, protecting them and loving them openly, regardless of the whispers that would follow. A few brave guests clapped softly at first, then stronger, admiration breaking through the scandal as others rose in support, their applause drowning out Clarissa's furious screams. Maria stood frozen, tears streaming down her cheeks as the reality of what had just unfolded sank in. For her song, born of pain and desperation, had pulled the truth into the light and changed the course of her life forever. Victor wrapped his arm protectively around her, guiding her away from the hall and out of the golden prison that had tried to break her, leaving behind a stunned crowd, a shattered bride, and a story that would echo long after the chandeliers dimmed.